Welcome, Walnut. I'm Lara, but you can call me Laz, your host for Walnut Wednesday. This is your reminder to be brave, be yourself, and know that you can make the world a better place just by what you decide today. Here, I'm going to share my weekly walnuttings with you on a Wednesday. Hello, Walnut. It is me, Laz, here for another episode of Walnut Wednesday, and today is a very special and delicious episode because we have the returning guest, Kate Bromley.
Hey.
Hello. Welcome. How are you today, Kate?
I'm good. It's in that weird between Christmas and New Year time that we're recording, so it's always a bit like, what day is this?
Yeah. And I slept in today as well. Kate and I were scheduled to have a chat, and I'm 2 hours delayed, so it's just been a day. It's just that those in between days are just a bit like that. So Walnut, what we were going to talk about today, because we have had a couple of comments when episode 110 aired, where people were like, "Where's Kate? I know that." Is everything okay? Are you guys fighting? La la la. So we thought we'd actually talk about this with you because I think it is a really great topic. Kate, do you want to give the background of the story?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first of all, we definitely didn't fall out. We love each other more than ever. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a few weeks ago now, either late November, early December, maybe even earlier, around that time, and we were going back and forth and trying to work out timings, and a date might work for me but it didn't for you, and then there was a date but we were just a bit tired, and I kind of was like, I love being on this, I still want to be on it, but maybe it's just not going to work out this time for 110, and that's okay. And you felt the same. I think you were like, yeah, we'll find a new thing and it'll be fine. And we just kind of let go of the stress of trying to make it fit into that specific number, because it just wasn't working out that time for no other reason than just scheduling and energy levels, really.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, well, in particular for me, so Kate, let me know if you resonate, and Walnut, you as well. We put a lot of pressure on like significant dates or numbers, like anniversaries of like loved ones past, or like even birthdays, all these things. We put so much pressure on a number when actually the concept of dates and times is a man-made thing, and it's what you give it meaning from in your head. Does that make sense? You know what I mean, Kate? Do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, a kind of interesting thing that's just happened is Christmas, right? So that's obviously, you've got to see the family or you got to do the thing on the day. And this year I didn't see my family on Christmas Day. And it actually was something I knew wasn't going to happen regardless of COVID, because my sister had other plans to go away. And the rest of my family's in New Zealand or away for the holidays. So right from the get-go, my sister and I made a plan to do something on the 23rd, and that was going to be our Christmas. And I don't know whether that would have thrown me another year or what that was about, but this time I was like, yeah, as long as we're together and we do something to mark the kind of occasion, it doesn't really matter if it's not the actual day. We can still watch our Christmas films and cook the roast, like break the rules, because what does it matter? It's just about making our own Christmas the way that worked for us. So yeah, and I had a friend check in on me about that. She said, I know it's great you're seeing your sister, but I don't want you to feel bad on Christmas Day. And I thought, well, I don't really know how I'm going to feel, but the main thing I do know is that I want to see my sister, and it won't matter if that's Christmas Day or not. That's the thing that would make me feel sad. But the date still does have meaning on its own. So it's a funny old thing to balance. So like our podcast and then this holiday just been, which was complicated for me being in the UK and COVID's bad again. So a lot of plans did change. Maybe that part of that pandemic's helped me learn to go with the flow a bit, that things aren't always set in stone and you've got to be a bit more flexible. Otherwise, you're just going to live in disappointment.
Yeah, I love that. And I think what we have sort of decided with these kind of episodes is to have that like masculine and feminine energy within it. So Walnut, what Kate and I sort of decided purely from the example of getting this episode recorded was as long as it's within the 10, it will be somewhere in there that works well for us. So we have that like masculine structure, but we do have that feminine flow to see like where it can be put rather than be really, really stuck for every single 10. And sometimes it might work out for every 10 and sometimes it might not. And that's actually really exciting. And that actually brings a little bit of like exciting flavor to my life a little bit as well.
Exactly. Like if you don't treat things like missing a deadline, particularly ones that we create for ourselves, like,
Yeah,
and I know
that's
you'll be a
important.
proponent for that, but like it's good to set goals and things, obviously, but not to the point where if you don't meet a goal that you've made up for yourself, that you consider it a failure. That's when it gets too regimented or too, it sucks the joy out of it, rather than being like, well, what actually matters? Us doing a recording matters, not the actual number of the episode that it's on. That's what matters to us the most. If it was about the number, then at this point we'd go, well, that's that then. See, I'll never come back. We've missed it. It's all ruined, which would be ridiculous. Yet I've done that about other things myself, diets or exercising. Oh, I've missed a day. That's it. Let's throw it all out the window. Or, even getting up in the morning, if you miss like, oh, I was supposed to get up at 7:30 to be productive in the weekend, and you decide, oh, well, I missed that. I might as well just stay in bed till noon and really just throw it all in the bin. And when you could just get up a half hour later and still be proud of yourself for getting up in the morning. Like, it's about the way you sort of put the emphasis, I think, which is whether you've got a black and white fail or pass, or you have this more, like you say, that more feminine or more free flowy of, well, around this bracket would be nice. I'm sure I can manage that. You give yourself
Yeah.
a bit of grace.
Yeah. And that's actually my like ideal day where I just like have this like, I have the structured masculine, the stuff that like I would like to get done, but it's like I choose when I do it. So I wake up when I want, and I don't know. I just always think about that. You need to have a really healthy, balance is not a really great word, but like a really good flow of both. It's not necessarily 50-50 all the time, but it does, you lean into each for their strengths. And that's actually quite like the most ideal harmonious way of living life, is having those two energies just flowing like a little river through your energetic wavelength.
Definitely. Like, because sometimes, let's face it, you got to catch a flight, you need to get there. There's not, I mean, there's,
Yeah.
there might be a touch of grace, but ultimately that's because if you've over prepared and you're like, all right, if there's anything delayed, I've given myself extra time, but that plane's leaving, right? So there's times where you just need to haul ass and do the thing, get to work on time or whatever it is. But we don't have to carry that through to literally every other thing in our lives. And it's nice to know when you can be more relaxed. And we've all been stressed out as well, or you might be this person where you're never on time to anything, and that's too relaxed for some, sometimes, when you've missed a few flights, I've missed a few, you think, well, that's not worth it, and it's hard when people, it's like that type A, type B thing of feeling like, well, I'm this kind of person, I'm early to everything. And then you give yourself a really hard time if you're 5-10 minutes late to something one time. Exactly. Or you're someone who's always late, so you don't really even try because everyone's going to expect that you're going to be late anyway. And that's a little bit, disrespectful as well. So there's not like, there is that kind of harmonious, like you say, picking and choosing, working out where that fits and where you need to show up and be there, and other times where you're like, well, I'm not going to sweat over this. This isn't worth getting all worked up about. And it's really hard because I tend to fall on the be early to things, and I do get really stressed out if I'm late. It's hard to break that. And I've got friends who are late to everything, and I know for them, sometimes they're like, oh, I do feel bad. I'm always the last person there. And it's hard for them to break that habit too.
Yeah, I am the same. I'm really like, well, I have been really hyper focused on like leaning back and having like this flow for quite some time now. And it's like a work in progress, right? Like everything. But like in particular for my book and my publishing date, I really wanted it to be published on Walnut Wednesday's birthday. I really wanted to click the publish button on what I think it was the 3rd of November or something like that. But I noticed like a typo, or I noticed something that I had to go back and change everything, and that prolonged it for like 3 days or something, and it really fucked me off, and I couldn't shake it. And a lot of the book process had these things where like everything continued to be delayed, and I was like getting that like twitch, like this is not in my linear how I wanted it to be. But I think that was the main thing. It's what I wanted. But if I took like a full back seat, even like full bird's eye view look at my book, was that going to impact what the typos say? Was it going to impact what the message of the book was? How my voice was expressed in the book, or any of that kind of stuff? No, it was literally my idea that I had planted about a certain date or time. And that's what I've continuously done through my life, about like being early or being the reliable friend, or whatever. And then I get days like now, after lots of like self Walnut work, days like today where I was told Kate that I would be online at a certain time, and I've fucking slept in 2 hours too late. And I say sorry, but I'm also like, I slept in, I'm
You
not
were
I'm not
sorry
kicking
too.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah, but you were sorry in case it was a missed opportunity, but because it wasn't, then there's no harm done. And I think that's the knowing the difference, right? Like, um, especially with the book, like you say, that creative process, trying to fit that into the more, normal things that we kind of do, is it's very difficult because you've got so many conflicting things going on. I had the same with my short film, which is that you want it to be the best it can be, but at a certain point you have to just do it. And so the times that yours got delayed, there are probably good reasons each time. And then it got to a crunch point where you're like, right, I just have to see this through, and there might be a typo, but I can live with it. But all those other moments where maybe there were delays, is that instead of it being like, oh, this is taking longer than I thought, is it was sort of an achievement that you had so much attention to detail and so much care for it, that you were like, well, I'm not going to rush this. I'm not going to do that. Would be a disservice, more than meeting a day that you'd made up for yourself, which is very tidy and very like meaningful to have it full on that day. But it would have been almost, a little bit unfortunate if you weren't happy with the product of it, because you'd put that date first. So ultimately, even if it was disappointing, and it would fuck me off too, it was for the betterment of the project, I think, that you ended up going, well, it's not what I'm pleased about, but I do need to take the time. And I had that too. It took a long time, different stages. And at a certain point, me and Etam, who was editing it, we were kind of like, look, there's a million ways we could do this, and some would be better than others, but we just have to be happy with what we've done and be confident and put that forward, and finally just go, yep, it's done. And sometimes that can be scary too, right? And giving yourself a date, you're like, well, I had to get it done by that date, so that's why that's like that. It's almost like a get out of jail card, whereas if you're waiting and you're perfecting, and then you're still like, there's still tiny little things about the film I'm like, oh, maybe I'd have done that a bit differently. But ultimately, I'm glad it exists, and I'm so glad your book exists. And I just think that's what matters more. You didn't blow the deadline and go, well, that's it, book's going in the bin then. Imagine, that'd be crazy.
Yeah, and I think also I have like this weird sense of, I find myself doing a little bit of get out of jail free things with people who aren't like directly linked to Walnut Wednesday or the Walnut Tree, like family and stuff, because going way off topic of dates and deadlines, but also like, because I know that I have intentional typos in there, I almost am like, I think I said to somebody the other day, oh, it might irk you a little bit, because I know that they are very like masculine structure people who will pick up on it, and people have commented like, oh yeah, a couple of typos, but you know, it's fine. So I do have that with some people, and then in other times when I'm just sitting by myself, just sitting and basking in all the book celebrations, I'm like, I fucking love my book, and I'm proud of like the work that I had to do internally to leave them in there, because that took heaps to not let my little OCD tendencies, you know, prolong it even more. I decided intentionally, no, I'm gonna just publish it with this in it, and that's what it is. And yeah, so I don't know, funny side note, I suppose.
It is, and you can apply that to, you know, those other things we talked about, which is, you know, deciding, okay, maybe I took another half hour in bed, but now I've gotten up and that's still just as good, because maybe I need that little bit of a rest, but I haven't, you know, blown off the whole day, still doing the podcast. Or okay, maybe we didn't do 110 episodes, like that number, but we are still doing the podcast. And it's that thing of being like, it's still good, and that not being it being ruined. Or, and I think that's the thing you see with, you know, usually on Facebook or Instagram, of people you don't know, them being all bent out of shape because, you know, at the wedding the flower was purple, not pink, or whatever. And I get that it's like, oh, that's their day and they want it a certain way, but you know, you're only ruining it for yourself, right? And I think people don't, is that if you want to focus on missing the deadline or the little thing being a bit wrong or whatever, you will be right. And if you want to focus on, but it's still good, and this is still a wonderful day, or the podcast is still really fun, the experience of us doing this podcast is no different for the number episode that it's on, then you'll also be right. And it's about what, you know, the perspective you choose to take. Missing the flight, that's a fucker. Try not to do that. It's horrible. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
But you know, those other things where it's more, you know, self-constructed, it's your own decision, not dependent on something else that's bigger than you. Going to the gym, doing a passion project, you know, all those different things. Don't be so hard on yourself. Try to like, if your mindset is on, I can, and I give myself a little wiggle room because that's just human nature, you will mostly start realizing, I achieve what I want to do. It might not be on the dot of the day or the time or the hour, but it doesn't mean you failed. And I think the more pressure we put on ourselves, the more we set up ourselves to fail when we really aren't. It's quite arbitrary.
Yeah, love that. I love that. Thank you, Kate. Yes, it actually reminds me of like a little bit of discussion stuff that we had in where just really when you do these little things, Walnut, is to celebrate yourself and note it down on like your evidence list or whatever, because you, when you first, well, I'm talking from my experience, but when I first started this leaning back into not being so structured thing, you know, you do get bully demon and those thoughts in your head telling you you're a piece of shit and you suck and whatever, but you have to really just continue on very slowly. And looking back now in hindsight, I don't really get the bully demons anymore when I go, oh, I slept in, you know, but before I bloody did. Like, it was, you know, more evidence towards telling me in my inner self that I suck and that I'm a piece of shit and that I'm not a good friend or not organized, or all your biggest fears that you have about your internal self. So I think that's a really important thing to note down as well, is when you do the things, for example, my sleeping in but still doing this podcast episode now, no, that's part of my evidence for that I still did the thing and that I am organized, I am a really good podcast host, or whatever the things that I need or want to tell myself or know that I am.
And in a way, that's not, you know, to let yourself mistreat people. None of this is about saying, and, you know, fuck you to this person or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
more about like, oh, you know, I know I was supposed to make a cake. Today was really crazy, but I picked one up instead, or I brought chocolate instead, something that's easier or whatever it might be, but not because I don't care about you, but because I'm really sorry, I couldn't manage this today. This is what I did instead. And that's okay too. And sort of like the kinder you are to yourself in a way that's not like, oh, I can, you know, forget to go to lunch with my friend and not say anything, like, you know, that's not a good thing. But you can be more resilient in the sense of, I did make plans with this friend. This isn't the day to day. And I've got the sort of resilience by knowing, you know, giving myself a break, that I'll tell that friend, I'm really sorry. I know we had these plans. I can't make it today. This is why. And I think you tend to give, you know, get out what it returns to you in that sense of, you know, friends will normally be like, hey, look, thanks for letting me know, I understand. But if you just kind of go, oh, well, I'm going to be late, I'm not going to make it, I'm already in trouble, I might as well just not say anything or go, or, you know, ignore it, that in for a penny, in for a pound thing, you're going to get that return, which will be resentment. Because if you're letting yourself be the failure, you know, right? Like, and it's not just with yourself. If you're more resilient with yourself, which is, look, I might be a bit late, but that's not a write-off to get out of bed or to do the thing or to work on my book or whatever it might be, and you extend that out into life, you're also going to be more gracious with other people who might be, you know, sorry, I'm running late because sorry, I slept in for the podcast, you know, and I'm like, I'm just chilling, it's fine. I don't take that as a slight because I know you. And I think and I know that, like, I didn't feel any disrespect from that. And I think when we feel anxious about how other people are going to project us, we sort of feel that as well quite often, you know, being overly apologetic, beating ourselves up. Sometimes, you know, friends are just like, well, now I really feel like I have to overcompensate and make them know that they're not bad at all, which is sort of like not a good thing to make people do for you. You shouldn't need over validation. Or you get those rare people who see that as an opportunity to then go, yeah, you're really useless actually. And you go, thanks for just validating everything I thought that was bad about myself. So I think I mean, that was a tangent as well, but I think by being kind to yourself and flexible and understanding goals can shift, but that you're still reaching for them and you're still like working on accomplishing, not just feeling like you're a failure, disappointment, or setting yourself up for failure, you create a resilience in yourself that does kind of exude out into the world and gives other people permission to do the same.
Yeah. You really hit the nail on the head there, Kate, with like, again, that ebb and flow of even how you receive and what you give back. And so I wanted to actually just touch on, you know, how you receive it from others, and you gave the really good example about today when I was like, oh fuck, sorry. And you're like, oh good, you know. But like even around the Christmas time, just talking about what you were touched on earlier, I got like she always gives me like a little bag of treats. So we had like little chocolate balls and some fudge or whatever, and just a little thing from like the kids or whatever. And she was like, oh, I didn't make the fudge, I just had to go out and buy the fudge this year, you know. And, you know, I mean, this is a bit exaggerated, but, you know, I could have been like, oh, is it bought? Where's it from? How much was it? Or, you know, really giving that evidence back. Or how I did receive the fudge was like, oh, good, I love fudge. And it's really kind of you to actually just give me a gift. I didn't expect to get a gift anyway. So like, I thought we could touch on how we receive and give back those situations too, because you are going to come to a time, Walnut, where you do have to choose how you respond to someone ebb and flowing through life as well. You know, like it's all just a little flowy thing. So yeah, I thought we could talk about that a little bit, Kate.
Yeah, I think there's an element of the gut feeling to that too, right? Is that, you know, you can sense from that this is a person that would normally make the fudge, right? I'm not a person who would normally do it. So if someone says that to me, I mean, I'm not going to laugh, but there's probably being like, please don't apologize. That like this, that's so fine. It's not even worth mentioning, but it matters to that person, right? So you do want to say, oh no, it's absolutely fine. I just appreciate the gift. And I think that's the perfect response. But you also get that gut thing, kind of similar to the example I use of the, oh, I could have, you could, it's the delivery too of the person going, yeah, it's just bought because I couldn't be bothered. And people sometimes speak like that, which is that sort of probably truthful, like probably I was busy or I chose to do something for myself instead, which is actually fine, but it's the confrontational delivery as well. And there's usually that gut thing. And, someone says it in that way, you're usually going to go, oh no, that's fine. Like, I'm scared now. I'm scared to say anything.
Yeah.
And I think when we're talking about being kind to yourself and flexible and selfish, it's in a good way, that you can say, I'm sorry, but, or not be sorry and give people heads up about things and be very, I think just considerate of the people you might be affecting while you're going through that thing of, maybe I'm gonna cancel this thing because I'm exhausted and I never do that. Or maybe I'm gonna buy the dessert rather than bake it. And that's a great achievement for you. But the thing to kind of balance is with that give and receive is the way you put that out and the way you'd expect someone put that out to you, which is to be honest. And it's not I should, go home with myself and give myself 30 lashes for being so shocking, or I shouldn't be like a bulldog, like, I dare you to say a word against this. Like, yes, so when I'm late. It's that middle ground. And I think that's really hard to find because we haven't really had it. It's been particularly again for women, if you think about the whole, motherhood thing and the pressures. Thank God I'm not a mother yet, but the pressures to be perfect and have all the organic food or the non-allergy or apologizing because your kid hasn't bathed in a couple days. I'm like, your kid probably bathes more than me. Don't even worry. Like, I'm so not concerned, but it's not really about me. It's about how that person feels and being able to sort of use your intuition, I suppose, to glean where that's coming from, whether it is an anxiety because they're not at that point where they can let themselves off. So they're constantly like, giving themselves a hard time. I think people like us who are kind of finding our way better is making sure we kind of respect that. Like, hey, no need to feel bad, but I totally get why you're stressed out about that thing, rather than maybe being like how I feel, which is almost like, God, I don't have time in my life for that stress. I can't believe they're stressing about that because it's so far out of my sort of state. So yeah, I mean, it's rambly, it's hard because it's very specific, but I think, it's always the same is respecting people and treating people how you want to be treated. Doesn't mean putting yourself last and going to the thing because you're exhausted, but it does mean respecting people enough to say if you're not going to make it and give people time to cancel, or say, look, there's a refund deposit down, I'm sorry, obviously I'm going to pay my share for it even if I'm not showing up. Like, it's about keeping your consideration for that other person, but without it coming as a sacrifice to yourself. I think maybe that's the best way. And sometimes we do just have to do shit. It is the way it is. The flight's going to go if you don't turn up. But other times, when it's not the end of the world, you don't have to treat it like the end of the world, but treat it with the respect that it deserves,
Yeah, like there will be multiple different opportunities leaning on each side of the scale, and you get to choose how you respond and in what way. Yeah.
And I think for me, my biggest issue for the longest time has been the fear of how people respond if I don't. And I'm get the anxiety of, oh, I really don't want to go, even though I love the person. Maybe I'd be happy when I'm there, but part of me thinks, no, I just want to be home this entire day. And I know that in my bones, but what I'm fretting about is, how do I tell them? That's ultimately what I'm fretting about. And what I've come to is not, oh, I'm going to have to let all these people down, but for the most part, people do understand. If you're honest and you are apologetic and you are sort of like, it's just, this is the way it is right now, people do tend to be understanding. And if they're not, then there's either that opportunity to sort of educate and say, you can give yourself that break too. I expect that in return. Or, oh, well, the reason I'm afraid to be honest with this friend is because I can't be without being chastised. Maybe they're not a great friend. And it's all the, it's all the things we need to work out. But I just feel like not talking about something never solves anything anyway. And I'm lucky, having been from a family that's very much of that opinion. We talk it all out. But a lot of people aren't. So speaking up about your own needs, and trying to, create a healthy dialogue, or maybe adjust and grow with friends who aren't that way. It could be a scary prospect, but ultimately you're gonna be better off, because you're either gonna grow in your friendship or make room for other people that are better for you, who would understand, because we all need that. We don't need that on top of things. And I don't want to be giving that out to anyone. I want them to all feel they can say that to me too. Like, I didn't make the fudge, and I go, that is fine. I love the fudge, exact same thing as you,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think, like all things, if you're going to ask for that grace and you're going to extend the grace to yourself, extend the grace to everyone else as well.
Yeah. I have nothing to add apart from I was also just thinking while you were talking, Kate, if there is a Walnut listening who doesn't know you, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself and tell Walnuts where to find you if they want to like snoop you a little bit more?
Sure. I'm Lara's professional best friend. No. I live in the UK, which is why we have the different time zones. And I'm a filmmaker in London. And I'm a very good talker with Lara, so she brings me back time after time. And I don't hang out a lot on social media, but probably my Instagram is the best place, which is Miss K Bromley. And there's a couple links to some of my films and stuff there as well. And yeah, I think my biggest cred for this though is just being your best friend. We met at uni, and now the years are racking up. It's been a while.
I know.
Yeah, it's quite impressive.
It's been 10 plus years now, I think.
Yeah. I met you when I was 19, you were 18, I think.
I am 16 going on 17. What is that song from? Sound of Music, I think. Yeah. Anyway, I digress. Thank you. Yeah, so Walnut, this week Kate and I started as a joke for our episodes where I had Kate on for episode 10, and then we made a little ha and we're like, see you at episode 20, ha 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 ha. And then offline, I think we were like, actually, do you want to? And Kate was like, yeah. And then it just started 20, 30, 40, all the way up to 100. And then this one was the little not straw that broke the camel's back, but the little new little dent in the water, but didn't really stop us from continuing to do it. So Kate is going to be back every few eps, and it's lovely and it's delicious. So welcome, Walnut, if you haven't met the Kate chats before, because these conversations I continue to enjoy having them on here, because it's actually just like how Kate and I talk. So it's like you're a fly on the wall for our normal conversations that we have when we're just on like FaceTime.
Yeah, it's much more like specific to whatever's going on, but then we'll end up having these deep lessons that we've gleaned from, whatever's happened that week. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I've just learned something new about who I am, and it goes so deep. And I mean, I think, our conversations always were a bit more than surface, but certainly this podcast, and maybe a year or two before that podcast started, I think we've just opened like the floodgates, in the sense of like, we do find the kind of the meaning and everything. And it's nice to have someone where you can do that without it being, sometimes you do need those conversations with friends that are a bit more just how life's been and the holidays and that kind of thing. But I know I'm never going to get a exhausted eye roll from you if I'm like So this thing happened yesterday, and now I think I know more about who I am.
But I'm here for it now, though. So, Kate, just before we wrap up this episode, we've asked you what being a walnut means to you multiple times, but maybe in the context of the new year, what does being a walnut mean to you for 2022?
Well, even just in the context of, like you say, the last couple of years we've had this conversation today, I would say it's be resilient and do the thing, however that looks. It doesn't need to be by this time, date, by this place with that person, that you'll get there. And no one knows where, the curves and the roads are going to go. So if you're resilient and you think you're near the end and it turns out you're actually just hitting another corner and the journey continues, your resilience will take you through that other length of the journey, because you'll know, well, I know myself, I'll get there eventually. And I need to use that on myself too.
I love that. And I actually really love the word resilience. It like makes me feel really strong and powerful. So thank you for that choice of word.
Yeah, it's from my sister, actually. She was talking about the difference about just coping and being resilient and the difference between the two. And that could be a whole chat, but it's really stuck with me. And she's, doing a master's in like positive psychology and wellness and all this kind of stuff. And it's just a, wealth of information right now. So we have all the deep chats too, me and her.
Yeah, awesome. That's really cool. We talk about resilience a lot at my work too, for obvious reasons if you know where I work. But yeah, it's a really great word. It's a really great word in terms of the walnut journey as well, I think. So yeah, very delicious, very good. Well, Walnut, I also just wanted to add before I say goodbye was I'm also very aware that Kate and I are very similar in terms of structure and things. So if you are somebody on the other end and a really flowy person, and potentially you resonate with the person who maybe shows up late, or like a similar example to that, I encourage you to please Walnut and reach out and let us know, because I think, yeah, it'd be nice to hear another end of the conversation too. Because we might just be talking to one particular type of walnut, but I realize that there's probably some walnuts listening that are like, actually, hang on, I have something to raise. So like, I just want to give you permission to reach out, jump in the walnut tree on Facebook, because these discussions are discussions, like they continue on. So there's so much more to add, and I just want you to know that you have a voice here, even though it's not recorded, but I want your voice to be expressed however you need to. And I want to hear from you. And I'm sure, Kate, you agree. you love discussing just as much as me. So please feel free. Kate, any last things before we wrap up that you want to share for the oncoming year, or anything in general, really?
Well, yeah, the only thing, and we talked about this briefly before we started recording, is that it's the end of the year. By the time this is aired, I think it'll be the beginning of the new year, 2022. And perhaps after the last couple of years, the last thing we are focusing on are absolutes and guarantees. And we've all learned a little bit that plans do change, and we've all hopefully got a bit of resilience from that. And all I'd say is for 2022, like, if you have your goals, if you have your plans, know that, things may change that are out of our control, and we've had to put up with a lot of external disappointments. But we've got through that, and still have your plans and your goals, but be resilient and know that they can change. And if they change because you change and or factors change around you, that it'll be all right, and that you've got permission to change your mind, or to shift the deadline, or to make the best of something that looks close to what your original idea was. So I think maybe go into this year not with a defeatist attitude of, well, there's no point making any plans, because if we look at it too broadly, there's never anything could happen. Zombie apocalypse, really hoping there's not, but there could be. Is that thing of being like, you can accept that the things that you can't change, but you can still roll with the punches, and you could still have like a beautiful year. So that's my wish for everyone, and to just be really kind to yourself about any, resolutions. Give yourself a bit of flex.
I love that. I actually don't really have anything to add aside from like roll with the punches, but also roll with the celebrations as well, and keep that celebration train going too. Because so often we do turn to, I'm going to go on a tangent, onto the punches, but remember to celebrate yourself as well, Walnut, and you made it to another year. So nothing else to add, just wrapping up. Kate, thank you for being here and for being flexible with me, and for all the delicious discussion that you bring to my life and to the podcast and to the world, because you are wonderful and delicious. So thank you for being here again, and I've really enjoyed having you.
I always enjoy being here, and thank you. This is a really nice chat. I loved it, as always.
And Walnut, thank you for being here, and thank you for giving us your time. And like I said, we want to hear from you, but mainly happy New Year, and I will talk to you next Walnut Wednesday. Bye.